The first item on the agenda tonight is item 3, the approval of minutes. May I have a motion to accept agenda item 3A, the approval of minutes from the February 11 and February 13 meetings?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes 4-0. Next, we're up to agenda item 4, communications. 2 letters were received from residents regarding a staffing issue. May I have a motion to accept agenda item 4A, acceptance of communications received?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes 4-0. At this time, we'll move to agenda item 5, which are recognitions, and I'd like to hand the meeting over to Dr. Bossert, who will introduce this month's special recognitions.
Thank you, Mr. Tuck, and thank you to the Board of Education for always providing an opportunity to recognize the accomplishments and achievements of outstanding students, faculty, and staff members. Tonight we will do both. So to begin to assist us in that regard, I'd like to call upon today's North High School principal and our future Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education, Dr. Holtzman. Here, you can show, Dan, you can show the, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Dr. Bossert, Mr. Tuck, President of the Board, Board Trustees. It is my honor to recognize Mr. Shad, teacher of English Language Arts at North High School, who has recently received National Board Certification. This program was designed to develop, retain, and recognize accomplished teachers and to generate ongoing improvement in schools nationwide. It is the most respected professional certification available in K-12 education. Created by teachers for teachers, the National Board Standards represent a consensus among educators about what accomplished teachers should know and should be able to do. The certification process requires that teachers demonstrate standard-based evidence of the positive effect they have on student learning in alignment with the 5 core propositions. Proposition 1, teachers are committed to students and their learning. Number 2, teachers know the subject they teach and how to teach those subjects to students. 3, teachers are responsible for managing and monitoring student learning. 4, teachers think systematically about their practice and learn from experience. 5, teachers are members of learning communities. They must exhibit a deep understanding of their students, content knowledge, use of data, assessments, and teaching practices. They must also show that they participate in learning communities and provide evidence of ongoing reflection and continuous learning. Not a process for the weary, and certainly one to be celebrated. Congratulations to Mr. Shad. And this certificate has been presented by Dr. Bossert and the board, which I will happily give to Mr. Shad tomorrow morning. Thank you so much.
And for our next faculty recognition, the gentleman who said age before beauty, Mr. Nelson.
All right, it is my honor to recognize Dr. Jeannie Kuhner, our family and consumer science teacher, for achieving National Board Certification as a middle school educator. This certification represents the highest standard in teaching excellence, requiring a rigorous multi-year process of self-reflection, analysis, and demonstration of advanced teaching practices. National Board Certified teachers must exhibit mastery in content knowledge, instructional decision-making, creating inclusive learning environments, and fostering community partnerships. Dr. Kuhner has not only met but exceeded these high standards in her FACS classroom. Her unwavering commitment to hands-on, engaging lessons ensures every student is an active participant in their learning. Dr. Kuhner's FACS classroom is a true environment of exploration and discovery where she cultivates critical thinking and problem-solving skills. Dr. Kuhner's achievement elevates our entire district. Her dedication to designing lessons that promote student thinking and not just student doing prepares our students to be successful, engaged citizens in our rapidly changing world. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Jeannie Kuhner on this remarkable accomplishment that benefits both her colleagues and, most importantly, the students she teaches every day at North Middle.
We have one more set of recognition, please. The group that is waiting so patiently right in the front row staring at us. It's lovely to see the entirety of the South High leadership team here tonight to help recognize our students, and to assist us in doing so, our acting principal, Mr. Hopkins.
Thank you, Dr. Bossert. Good evening, esteemed members of the Board of Education, Central Administration staff, community members, and honored guests. Tonight we have the opportunity to celebrate the remarkable achievements of 13 outstanding high school seniors, participants in the transformative humanities course Facing History. These students are being recognized with the Board of Education Recognition Award for their exceptional civic responsibility and leadership. Facing History is not just a course, it's a commitment. It's a commitment to understanding the complexities of our shared human experience, to confronting the darkest chapters of history, and to building a more just and compassionate future. These students have delved into profound topics exploring the roots of prejudice, the psychology of intolerance, and the enduring power of resilience. Through the interdisciplinary approach of Facing History, they have engaged with literature, history, psychology, and service learning. They have grappled with the atrocities of the Holocaust, the Rwandan genocide, and other historical injustices, not simply as passive observers, but as active learners seeking to understand the why behind these events. They've explored the concepts of bias and compliance, recognizing how these forces can shape our perceptions and actions. But their learning extends far beyond the textbook. These students have engaged in tangible, impactful projects that have made a real difference in our school and surrounding community. Let me share a few examples. This year, they organized a clothing drive for the Great Neck Public Schools, collecting, sorting, and delivering over 20 bags of clothing to Saddle Rock for the district shopping event. They participated in the New York Cares Coat and Clothing Drive, donating a dozen bags of warm clothing to support those in need during winter months. In collaboration with St. John's University, they provided a dozen boxes of shoes and toiletries for their upcoming midnight run, supplying essentials to the homeless in New York City. Further, they sent winter clothing to families of active soldiers residing in Fort Drum, offering warmth and gratitude for their service. Their commitment to cultural awareness is evident in their impactful initiatives, such as decorating bulletin boards to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, Holocaust Remembrance Day, and Black History Month, promoting awareness and appreciation within our school community. They're currently volunteering with organizations such as Head Start, the Henry Viscardi School for the Disabled, Lakeville Elementary, and our high school's ENL classes, embodying the role of agents of change. Furthermore, these students have engaged in rigorous academic work, researching historical atrocities through the lens of genocidal law, and proposing revisions to enhance victim protection. They're also in the planning stages of a school-wide relief effort for California, inspired by previous Facing History drives supporting Puerto Rico and Texas, demonstrating a proactive approach to addressing contemporary challenges. And they have scheduled a visit to the Anne Frank exhibition at the Center for Jewish History, reinforcing their commitment to understanding the Holocaust. These 13 seniors have embodied the spirit of civic responsibility and leadership. They have shown us that understanding history is not merely an academic exercise, but a powerful tool for creating positive change. They've demonstrated that even in the face of immense challenges, we have the capacity to choose empathy, understanding, and action. Tonight, we celebrate their dedication, their courage, their unwavering commitment to building a better world. We're incredibly proud of these young leaders, and we're confident that they will continue to make a profound impact on our community and beyond. In addition to honoring these students, it is also important to honor our dedicated teaching staff who devote their time, both inside and outside of the classroom, to this program and these exceptional students. So Ms. Cerise, Mr. Fade, Ms. Kinsey, Ms. White, and Ms. Scheinberg, we thank you. I would also like Ms. Cerise and Ms. Kinsey to come up to the podium to help recognize each one of our students. Please join me in congratulating these exceptional students and faculty members involved in our wonderful Facing History course.
Ready, stay online? Nina, come on up. Katie. Reed. Yu Yang. Catherine. Jaden. Sophia. Eugen. Nayab. And Kelly. Kelly.
Thank you once again. Thank you to the Board of Education for this opportunity, and congratulations once again to our outstanding group of seniors.
Does any member of the paparazzi would like a photo? You may come up.
Well, congratulations. It's a very special, it's a privilege to listen to all that you've accomplished. It's quite an accomplishment to be able to look out beyond one's own immediate circle and try to make a big difference in the world. And it's really a credit to yourselves to be involved. It's really a privilege to watch and listen. So thank you. With that, we'll move to agenda item 6, which are the student delegate reports. This month's student delegate reports will be given by North Middle School students, Jonah Gohari, Noah Kaya, and Joseph Lahani.
My name is Jonah, and I have an update from North High School. On Tuesday, February 25th, and Wednesday, February 26th, the class of 2028 attended a field trip to the Anne Frank exhibition at the Center for Jewish History in New York City. The students were able to experience the full-scale recreation of Anne Frank's hiding place and view over 100 original collection items from the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam. Special thank you and gratitude to the Glickman family for this amazing opportunity. On Thursday, February 27th, our AP and Honors Biology and Science Research students attended an engaging presentation from Robert Ball from Hunter College on their research with elephants. The research focused on targeted personality devices to mitigate human-elephant conflict by utilizing customized sensory deterrents like flashing lights, predator sounds, and specific smells tailored to individual elephants' behaviors, effectively deterring them from entering farmland. North High School's second annual Unity Day event was yesterday, with day 2 tomorrow. 5 students and 1 teacher shared a personal story and/or experience that has shaped who they are as a person, what they value, and to provide students a unique perspective into who they are, and despite different circumstances. We have more in common than we realize. There were two student performances as well. Solo pianist and the Asian Culture Club closed the event with the lion dance. Thank you to the teachers and students involved in the planning and preparation for this wonderful event.
Hi, my name is Noah Kaya, and I have an update from North Middle School. On February 14th, Great Neck North Middle School celebrated P.S. I Love You Day, focusing on mental health awareness. The Health Education Department led efforts to highlight the importance of mental well-being and healthy coping skills. This event aligns with ongoing discussions in health classes across all grades. By participating, we reinforced that mental health is as crucial as physical health. Let's continue to support each other and spread love, kindness, and understanding daily. On February 8th, North Middle School hosted 200 students from 16 schools for the Long Island Math Counts competition. Our students dominated, with Victor Yang and Aaron Chu claiming first and second place in the countdown road. The team finished second overall, securing 5 spots at the New York State Championship in Saratoga Springs. North Middle School's achievements were that they received 8 trophies, which was the most of any school. And Victor Yang got first place in the written and countdown rounds and placed second in the team rounds. Aaron Chu placed second in countdown rounds, 6th in written rounds, and second in team rounds. Brian Liu and Jaden Wen also placed second in team rounds. Lucas Yi also qualified for the state championship. Congratulations to our outstanding mathletes. Our 6th graders got a chance to live like real-life archaeologists and explore King Tut's tomb. Social studies teachers like Miss Rachel Weissman and Miss Jenny DeMarco also turned Mrs. Weissman's room into King Tut's tomb, complete with organ jars, King Tut's possessions, and all the things that ancient Egyptians would bury their loved ones with. Students enjoyed this recreation to helping to make history come to life.
Hello, my name is Joseph, and I have an update from South High School. Colin Hu, Thomas Liu, Chloe Ning, and Michael Sun all qualified to take the prestigious American Invitational Mathematics exam on February 12th. The pending results will determine who advances to the U.S. Mathematical Olympiad. On Tuesday, February 18th, the varsity boys basketball team defeated Valley Stream Central, advancing to the semifinals. From February 24th to the 28th, South High was buzzing with excitement during Spirit Week. We appreciate all the students, faculty, and staff who embraced the theme days, class activities, and Rebel Olympics competition, making it a truly memorable week. Calvin Chang and Izzy Spagnoli represented South High in the New York State Track and Field Championship on March 8th, competing in the high jump at 3,000 meters, respectively. Simone Chan will be competing in the New York State Bowling Championship on March 15th. On March 21st is South High's SADD Assembly. Kate Gladden, a keynote speaker and author, will share her empowering message on resilience and overcoming unexpected obstacles. The South High Opera, Die Fledermans, will take place on Friday, April 4th and Saturday, April 5th. All are welcome to experience the musical talents of our students who have worked tirelessly to bring the production to the stage. And finally, we will share an update from South Middle.
March is National World Language Month. The World Language Department will host its annual poster contest. This year's theme is Languages, a Passport to Adventure. Student artwork will be displayed on TV screens around the school for all to see.
The Multicultural Club, in conjunction with the World Language Department, will be hosting the Pulsera Project, a fair trade nonprofit organization that educates, empowers, and connects Central American artists with students in more than 4,000 U.S. schools through the sale of colorful hand-woven bracelets, or pulseras in Spanish.
In a continuing commitment to literacy and social studies, 6th grade students are reading Accidental Archaeologist, an adventure to relive some of the most interesting surprise discoveries by ordinary people. 7th grade students are about to read Susanna's Midnight Ride, a historical fiction book based on the true story of Susanna Balling, a young woman during the American Revolutionary War. 8th grade students recently finished reading What the Night Sings, a novel about a teen Holocaust survivor who must come to terms with who she is and how to rebuild her life.
The South Middle School math team members, Ethan, Zale, Austin, and Kelvin, achieved an impressive third-place finish at the Math Counts Long Island chapter competition on February 8th. Zale delivered an outstanding performance, placing 4th in the final head-to-head countdown round, and finished with the 4th highest score overall as an individual. The team advanced to the New York State competition this month.
The first week in March was a highlight reel of honors for the music department. there was a record of 17 orchestra members representing South Middle at the Long Island String Festival. Simultaneously, 270 miles to the northwest from Long Island, there were 7 band members representing South Middle at the New York State Band Directors Association All-State Middle School Honors Band in Syracuse.
Our 8th grade special education students used Magic School to interview historical figures from the 1920s and the Great Depression, as well as completed a World War I battle project, collaborating in groups to create and analyze infographics displayed in the classroom. And that'll do it for our students' report. Thank you.
Nice teamwork, gentlemen. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Bossert, who always has the hard acts to follow.
But I have a trick up my sleeve. First of all, gentlemen, thank you very much for your comprehensive report. For those members of our community that are present that aren't aware, in prior years, our student delegates had been charged with giving reports of what was happening in their school, and we took turns hearing from delegates from each of the buildings. This year, the Board of Education charged our delegates with representing information from all of our secondary buildings, and that was an extremely comprehensive report, and you checked 4 boxes of things I was going to share. So thank you very much. It is time for the superintendent's report, but in advance of that, if it pleases the board, I will invite our students, who clearly have homework and studies and other things to engage in, that if you would like to head home to do those things, now would be the appropriate time to do so. If you would like to hear Mr. O'Keefe speak extensively about the district's budget proposal, please stay where you are. That's what we thought. Have a wonderful night.
Good night.
Superintendent's update as to yield as much time as required to Mr. O'Keefe in our evaluation of the budget. I will follow up the initial reports about our visit to the Anne Frank exhibit at the Center for Jewish History in Manhattan, and again, thank the Glickman family for opening these doors to our students. Dr. Holtzman and I had the opportunity to join 25 North High freshmen in touring the exhibit and then having a post-tour meeting with Queen Maxima, the ruling noble of the Netherlands. And this was a wonderful experience and opportunity for our students, and I'm sure a lifetime moment that they won't soon forget. Our students represented their families, themselves, and this district so well in their exchanges with the Queen of the Netherlands, who indicated that of her tour of Manhattan, her trip to New York, this was the highlight of her journey. So it really was an amazing opportunity, and Dr. Holtzman and I were very, very pleased to observe our students interacting with the nobility of the Netherlands, clearly the connection to where the actual Anne Frank house is. So pleased that so many of our students have had the opportunity to tour the exhibit and will continue to tour the exhibit as it stays through next fall, is my understanding. I have also spent some time in Albany recently, both advocating for fair funding for our schools and learning about updates from the State Education Department, some of which have been reported from Newsday recently and are in concert with our Portrait of a Graduate work as we carefully monitor the change to Regents requirements, the change to graduation requirements. We are shaping our work to meet those changes. And for those of you that do read Newsday, you may have read a report today that authorizes superintendents to give waivers for certain Regents exams when there are extenuating circumstances within the family or the home or the health of the child who's required graduation Regents exam. We've been asking and advocating that for some time. There are often circumstances that arise that prohibit our students from being successful on a singular exam, preventing them from achieving diploma and graduation due to extenuating circumstances within their lives and within their households. I admire and thank the Regents for taking action to authorize school officials to correct that gap that we've seen for some time, so we were pleased with that. Our Portrait of a Graduate work is continuing with our partnership with Malloy University. There will be a follow-up thought exchange shared with the community next week, so please expect an email and a QR code so that we can further our investigation of the traits, qualities, and characteristics prioritized for our community. when formulating our portrait of a graduate. We expect to report a draft of that portrait to the board this spring, and hoping that before the conclusion of this school year, the board has adopted the Great Neck portrait of a graduate as a result of this continued investigation. And finally, there was a thought exchange shared with parents and students of both North and South High, asking them to give their input of the traits and characteristics they would like to see as we select our future building leaders. There are some actions on the board agenda tonight for building leadership to conclude this year, but as we endeavor to identify permanently appointed principals for both North and South High for next year, we really want to hear from our students and parents of the traits, qualities, characteristics that they would like to see in these future leaders. The results of those surveys will be used by our selection committees, who will begin to convene in this process next week. We posted the positions prior to the February break, and as of this evening, we have received a large number of applicants and candidates for which our selection committee to begin reviewing next week. We have also received a very large number of responses for the North Middle School assistant principal position for the vacancy created by Ms. Gunning's impending retirement. So lots going on at the leadership level, and it'll be a focus and a priority of district level administration to work with our stakeholder groups to attract and retain some wonderful talent for our buildings. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, if it pleases the board, I will yield the remainder of my time to our Deputy Superintendent and School Business Official, Mr. O'Keefe, to take the board and community through where we are in our budgeting process. As we have mentioned several times, budgeting for the next school year begins even before this school year is underway. Mr. O'Keefe and his team have been doing a wonderful job crunching our numbers, looking at all aspects of revenue coming in and out of the district to make sure that we have a steady focus and guideline to present to the board and hopefully our community in the very near future. Mr. O'Keefe.
Thank you, Dr. Bossert. Thank you to the Board of Education, my fellow cabinet members, my school business administrator, Mr. Ernst, who's my right-hand man through all of this, the community members who have joined us here this evening, as well as those who are watching from home. I always start the presentation with just a quick timeline of the remaining presentations. This is the second one. Our third one will be later this month. The fourth presentation is the wrap-up of the budget presentations for which we have to adopt the budget. That happens on April 22nd. May 12th, we have the formal budget hearing, which is the public's last opportunity to take a look at the budget and ask any questions. And then, of course, it concludes on May 20th with the annual budget vote. The next few slides are just informational. I place them there each year. It's just to give anyone who's taking a closer look at the budget and they just see when they look at the line-by-line budget of prior years, all of these different numbers, and do those numbers mean anything? So yes, the expenditure codes that we reference when we're doing a budget, there is an actual uniform system that's required by the state of New York. Over the last couple of years, there's been some switches in the way we've done accounting here in the district to better align with the requirements now from the State Education Department as well as the federal authorities with reviewing our transparency reports. So we have made some shifts. We're in year 3 now of those shifts. So it's just the 2 outer years where you might see some anomalies that may not look right, but we've gone over those in previous presentations. This is an example of an actual account code for anyone interested. The general fund budget, which is the one we're always talking about in the budget presentation, starts off with the letter A. The next 4 numbers talk about the function. The function is really sort of like the department where the money's going to be spent. The next 4 numbers are the object, and that's the type of expenditure, whether it be supplies, materials, equipment, salaries, benefits. And then the trailing 7 numbers are which building or which department location and which program. So in this example here, just for the sake of an example, A 2110 4500 040 3100 is a general fund expenditure in regular education, which is 2110. 4500 means supplies and materials. It's at North High School, and it's for the math department. So if you were to look at those first 6 numbers, the 2110 45, and you looked at them here in Great Neck, or if you looked at them in Hassett, or you looked at them in Roslyn, they all mean the same thing. They all mean general education, and they all mean supplies and materials. The trailing numbers might change from district to district, however they want to code the location of the program, but there's tremendous uniformity in all accounting, both at municipalities, school districts, et cetera. So this just gives anyone who's interested just a little bit more back-end information. These function codes are in 7 categories. The first grouping, the 1000s, are general support. Second grouping, 2000s, is everything related to instruction. That's general education, special education, athletics, anything related to the students. 5000s is always transportation. The 6 to 8900s are community service. In our district, that's our recreation department. 9000 to 9099 are benefits. 9700s are debt service. Those are payments made on our bond debt. And the 9900s are interfund transfers. Money's going from one fund to another. So we could be funding transfers to a program for capital projects for the following year. It could be to fund special education placements in State 42-1 schools. It could be to fund our pre-K program, things like that. When you see a 99, you know that's a transfer between funds. So you've got the 7 categories, and then those 7 categories expand into 66 different unique function codes. So you see you have 3 columns of numbers up there, and I do know I'm going a little quick through this, but this is information we've covered in the past, and I always put all these presentations up on the website the next day, and anyone certainly that has any questions, certainly reach out to my office. So the first column are those 1000s we spoke of. That's the general support. The middle column is the instructional codes, everything we spoke of related to the students. And the final column on the far right, you have the 5000s, the 7140, which is recreation, the benefit codes, the debt codes, and then the transfer codes. So for tonight's presentation, we're going to be looking at the non-instructional side of the budget, which is about half of the budget. That'll be the column to the far left and the column to the far right. Our next presentation later this month will focus completely and only on the center column, which is everything related to instruction. As I mentioned, website is a good resource for all the materials. That hyperlink there on that page will take you right to the budget page, or if you go to our homepage or on our website, up in the top right corner, there's a button there you can press on that'll hyperlink you right back to the budget page where you'll find all the materials that we have of our presentations, as well as 2 documents like the ones you see here on the screen. Just the highlights. Similar highlights to highlights we've seen in the past. The one thing I'd point out, in prior years, you would also sometimes see additions. This is a year in which the budget is staying basically flat. There's no addition of any new programming, no addition of additional staff members. So basically holding steady. But even with holding steady, you know, we're maintaining our class sizes throughout the district, all the existing programs. As I covered in our last presentation, the projected tax levy cap for next year will be 3.05%, which is within the 2% tax cap, which only requires a 50% plus 1 simple majority vote. The tough part with budgeting the last few years is over the last 4 years, inflation has totaled nearly 20%, on average 4.94% annually. But because of the tax cap formula, the levy can only grow in that portion of the calculation of the formula by 2%. So you have 8% growth in the levy over 4 years, trying to deal with almost 20% of inflationary growth. Budget sustains all of our pre-K programs, both at Parkville and JFK, all of our clubs, our fine arts programs, co-curricular activities for the students. I covered the substantial investment we're recommending in the facilities for next year, a little over $10 million. Part of that's a $7+ million renovation to the South High Auditorium, installation of a proper exhaust and dust collection system at the robotics lab at South High. The South High South Middle plant needs a new hot water storage system, a new PA system, and a footbridge over at JFK, a large section of the rear of Lakeville's roof, full renovation of 2 bathrooms in the south building at Village School, and 1 of the boilers at Cumberland. That building does have 2 boilers. 1 is in need of replacement. Certainly the boiler that is there, if this one were to fail, you know, we certainly have heat in the building. We may not have full heating capacity in a very cold day, so we're not in any danger of not having heat, but we should change that boiler in the upcoming year. and then our continued commitment to our security upgrades, cameras, access controls, as well as our security staff, dedicated to secure, if possible, retired law enforcement in all security positions. So the first slide, like I said, is the 1000s. And again, we're going through quite a bit of information in a single slide. It's not meant to rush through it, but right now it is still a work in progress. Once the budget gets to the point where we're adopting it, we do give the full line-by-line budget, which, like I said, is about 800 codes. So for the sake of going through a presentation both with the board publicly and the community, I try to distill it down into these categories of several function codes, sort of grouping them appropriately. So in this first slide is, like I said, the 1000s. You see a $32,711,000 proposed budget for next year. Year to year, the growth in this category is about 2.65%. So we're keeping under inflation in our administrative costs. And our administrative costs in general are about 10 or 11% of our overall budget. The first category up top is board operations, so that's board meetings, that's the annual election, the budget vote, things like that. The district's clerk's office, the superintendent's office, the support staff, all of the professional development, meetings, conferences, things like that that go on through that office. The next is my office. It's the business office, the accounting office, payroll office, accounts payable, the 4 sets of independent auditors the district employs, our district treasurer, our purchasing department, all of our procurement. Next is personnel, our legal services. The 4th category is facilities. Then we have our central printing and mail room, district-wide insurance, and then BOCES. So just some highlights on this particular slide. You see some anomalies that might jump out at you. You see something in, say, the district-wide insurance line where you see this negative $689,000 number in one year, but in the prior year you see a $4.5 million expense. Both that recording as well as the recording up in the 3rd line with the legal services, those are just accounting entries. So at year end in the year before, we accrued for expense that we anticipated. That anticipated ended up not being needed. So the monies were reversed in the following year, which shows a negative. So it's not that we had a negative expense in that year or actually in the prior year that we really had $4.5 million. When you anticipate a potential expense in an upcoming year, you accrue monies in the year before, hold those monies aside in anticipation of paying for them next year. In this case, those monies were not needed. So those 2 anomalies might jump out at people. The rest of the categories are rather straightforward. Again, the entire slide is just a little over a 2.5% increase. The facilities department, which is our grounds, facilities, custodians, our maintainers, is staying relatively flat, as you can see. It's about a 1.25% increase year over year. The insurance line is the line that does seem a lot of growth year to year. And for the last 2-3 years in a row, insurance, and you may have even seen this with your own homeowner's insurance and car insurance, insurance is going up 15 to 17% a year. So we are absorbing those costs within the budget. The final category is BOCES. That one's a little confusing because you're paying that $1.1 million. That is just our fee to belong to Nassau BOCES. We spend a little over $10 million a year with BOCES on various programs. But as a member district within the county, and this is throughout the state, it's not something you can opt out of, but if you are a district within a particular BOCES, BOCES does not levy taxes. The districts that belong to the BOCES basically pay their administrative costs. So this is our portion of our fee to run Nassau BOCES. So the $1.1 million is not buying any BOCES services per se. It's literally our fee to belong to the BOCES. Next slide again, a lot of information in a small bit of a piece of presentation. The first category up top is transportation, and this one I broke down the different account codes for you. So you've got 3 different categories here. You have District Transportation Department, the $1.5 million. That's the department itself. So that's the supervisor, the assistant supervisor, the dispatcher, all of our in-district bus drivers, our matrons, the office itself, the clericals. That's the salaries and the materials to support that part of the operations. The garage is simply that, the garage. We have our own small garage for our small fleet of minibuses. So that's the cost to upkeep the garage. materials and things that are needed to run the garage. We have one mechanic down there. And the final category, which is the big ticket item, the $16.2 million for contractual transportation, those are the WE buses. You know, the majority of our buses throughout the district go from WE Transportation. We do contract out all of our bus fleets. $6.2 million is a large number, and as I recently discussed with the board, the breakdown on that number is about $5 million a year is spent on our public transportation. It's grown to almost $7 million. I think it's $6.9 million for our private school transportation, and the remaining $4.3 million is primarily special education, but a portion of it is also for athletics, student field trips, athletic competitions, academic competitions, all of the different other pieces of the transportation budget. So it is a large budget year to year. Growth is about 4%. The transportation contracts, and there's a little bullet down on the bottom that you might not see without me pointing it out, but we have a consumer price index that we talk about for the tax levy increase each year, and that's the year to year that we get in January, so it's the preceding 12 months. But that's not the CPI that transportation contracts use. We use the May CPI, and unlike the tax cap calculation, there's no 2% cap on it. It is whatever the CPI is. So the CPI this year was 3.9, the year before was 3.5, the year before that it was 6.3. So transportation contracts are governed by that increase and not necessarily the increase of our tax levy at the 2% piece. So that is a challenge. The Recreation Department does look like an anomaly, jumping to $1.3 million next year, up from basically $1 million this year. That growth is because quite a bit of the summer program was being paid for by COVID grants, and those COVID grants did run out at the end of last year. So now we don't know necessarily whether or not we'll still get that same participation next year, but if participation this summer is the same as it's been in prior summers, we anticipate those costs of the general fund to be about $1.3 million. But since this program would be supported by parental payments, there is an offset in the revenue side of the budget equaling this. So if it doesn't come to fruition, it's $1.3 million, and we only spend $1 million. Well, it's probably because we're only receiving $1 million on the other side from parental payments. So while this does seem like a large increase, I do need to budget for what could be the worst-case scenario. If it doesn't come to fruition, and now with the certain portions of the camp not being covered by grants, that there's a change in enrollment, well, then we'll make changes in upcoming budget years. And believe it or not, we wrap up the first half of the budget with this third slide. Again, I tried to structure the groupings, in categories that would make sense to group them. The top category are the payments that the district pays to the employer retirement system and the teacher's retirement system on behalf of our staff. And we were rather fortunate this year because most years the year-to-year growth here is rather large. But the stock market last year did very well, which is one of the big drivers that funds the retirement system. So we're only experiencing about a 1.97% year-over-year growth. There are some years where it could be 4, 5, 6% growth in this particular category. Again, an expense out of the district's control that doesn't have to obey the formula of the tax cap. But we did get some relief here. So that $16 million are monies that we anticipate paying to New York State on behalf of our employees. That's different from what the employees contribute on their own. The next bundle is all the various forms of health insurance, whether they be actual physician's insurance, dental insurance, life insurance. It's also your FICA Social Security, workers' compensation, because we are self-funded with workers' comp, any potential unemployment costs, and Medicare Part B payments to our retirees. When somebody retires, they stay on our health insurance, and then when they become Medicare eligible and they start paying Medicare Part B payments, it is our obligation to refund those payments to those employees. So this is, even though this category usually grows by a large percentage because we've had health insurance increases in the last few years of 10, 12%, this year it's only about 2.5% growth year over year in this benefits category, which again is another blessing to us as we build this budget because it has been challenging. Third category is tax anticipation notes. So a district, the majority of our funding, as you know, comes from the taxpayers. Those payments come to us around the beginning of, the end of a particular year and halfway through the second year. We get some of them a little bit early, but the bulk of the money comes in as we get to, say, November, December, and then as we get to like May, June. We hold aside monies if we ended up having to go out and issue a note for cash flow purposes, because again, that's our revenue. So you open a school year with whatever monies you have in the bank. Obviously, you're spending money as you're going through the year with no revenue coming in. That money's held on the side if needed to issue a note, basically short-term borrowing for the district. So it's just a hedge in case of an emergency. There's also an energy performance contract. That contract ended in the current year, which is why you see nearly $1 million drop there. It drops from $1.6 million down to $700,000. And then the last piece that's part of that puzzle is tech purchase debt payments. When it was inexpensive to borrow money to buy technology, instead of buying the equipment outright, the district entered into these technology purchase plans. So they were paying over 4 or 5 years to pay off, iPad purchases, computer purchases, things like that. So we have one payment left of about $315,000, which we'll pay at the beginning of next fiscal year. So again, this category in next year's budget presentation will drop down again because those debts will be paid off, and now all of our technology is paid as we go. Last category, which is the largest for capital projects in our debt, is our bond debt payments. So as you know, we entered into a $74 million bond campaign, borrowed nearly $60 million to fund that campaign. So we do have to pay off those monies over a 20-year period. So $4.3 million of that number there is our annual debt. We do fund our pre-K over and above the grant that's given to us by the state. As I said earlier, there are special education placements in certain 4201 schools, children that go to Lavelle School for the Blind, or Viscardi School, or to Millneck Manor School for the Deaf. Those tuition payments are paid for by the district through this particular account code, done differently than other tuition payments to, say, a BOCES placement. And the last piece is the capital improvement. So like we said, we're looking to invest about $10 million next year within the budget in capital improvements. So that's where those monies are recognized. So you're seeing a rather large year-to-year increase there and a decrease in the line above it. Basically, we slightly upticked the amount of capital projects that we're doing to offset the fact that the energy performance contract is being paid off. That way, if we want to move forward in the future with another EPC or energy performance contract, those monies are held as a placeholder within the tax cap calculation, and it doesn't cause those swings or fluctuations for the community. Because if you let it fall off and you come back at a later year with adding $2 million in debt, that adds $2 million onto the levy, which is a surge increase in that particular year. So while we still need these capital projects, the more prudent thing to do is to put it into those projects, start expediting them, and then hold those monies aside if we need to move forward with another energy performance contract. So this growth in that particular category is high, 24%, but you see a 57% decrease in the category before it. So overall, the budget so far, expense-wise, is coming in a little under 3%, which is quite amazing considering the inflation. Inflation last year was 2.95, which is great in comparison to the years before. 2 years ago, obviously, we all know it was 8%. So before I move on, were there any questions from the board on this section of the presentation? No? Good. I'll move on. So I know we covered this in the last presentation, and I offered a conceptual schematic. So this particular slide is a continuation from that presentation. So one of the things the board has to consider this year to put on the ballot would be a proposition asking the community permission to take monies from the capital reserves for these particular projects. So like we discussed, one of them would be a synthetic playing field surface at North Middle School, along with other site improvements like refurbishment of the track, installation of a new grandstand, press box. There are bathrooms currently in that grounds garage, but they're in poor shape. This would fully renovate those bathrooms, as well as connect them to the public sewer system. Right now, they're serviced by a cesspool. Construction of a storage building that would take the place of several connexes or like shipping containers that you might see on the property where they store materials. And then there would also be a concession stand for the students to operate on the front end of that. New pedestrian walkways from either side of the venue, because right now to get onto the property, you literally have to walk through the driveway of the maintenance garage, which isn't necessarily always the safest for people coming onto the property. And then installation of a compliant playing field lighting system. And then the other piece of the request would be to renovate Room 21. It's a project I've discussed extensively with Brendan over at North Middle. We're going to take the former shop, which is no longer needed because we did those STEM lab renovations last summer, and we're going to repurpose this room and make it a multi-purpose room. And we can have, whether they be staff meetings there, parent meetings there, large scale instruction with the students. The lab could be used for a number of different purposes. So this would be a full renovation of that room, new flooring, ceiling, lighting, new HVAC system with heating and cooling. Since it would be a large assembly space, we would need to cut an egress door to the exterior, and it would also include any furnishings, new technology, and the AV equipment. And last time we covered a series of questions that we've been getting about the fields, and since the last presentation, I've gotten a few more. So I figured as we get these questions, it's good to put them out there so other people see them, because if somebody's asking the question, obviously there are going to be other people with similar questions. So why are we looking at this project at north before south? Certainly we do have to make a choice. We only have a set number of dollars in the capital reserve, so we do have to pick one first. But from the purposes of an engineering standpoint, the north project is more straightforward. There's a defined space, it's an existing field, it's within an existing track, in an existing complex. We don't have a similar location right now at south. If you remember, about a year or so ago, we discussed the south location where the current football field is and the current track. There's a lot of flooding there, so we don't believe that to be the best location for a field. So it is going to take some time for us to examine that property because there are restricted covenants and we can't change the topography there. We also need to work through the state education department, and we also need to make sure that it's ADA compliant. So in my recommendation and Dr. Bossett's recommendation to the board, we believe the north field would be the most appropriate to do first. That way we have planning time to look at south if this proposition is successful. We talk about approval from state education department. What does that mean? So each May we have a budget vote, and in that budget vote we have either the capital projects that we just spoke of or something like this. And we're asking the community for approval, same way we did with the bond. So the community approves that, but that still doesn't mean we can go ahead with the project. That's just the okay from the community to spend the money. Now we have to get approval from the state education department, very much like a homeowner would have to do with an extension on their own home. They've got to go to a building department to get a building permit. So once a project passes, we have to send up a letter of intent to the state education department declaring what it is that our voters have approved and what we intend on doing. They assign a project team to us. Then our architects and engineers have to design it and send the architectural drawings and all the schematics and everything up to Albany. And then there's a back and forth over a lengthy period of time between architectural review and engineering review that could take literally 40 weeks or more before they issue us a building permit. And we can't do anything. We can't go out to bid on the project. We can't put shovels in the ground. There isn't anything we can do until we actually have that building permit in hand, just the same way we would need to do on our homes. We literally post the building permit on the site, just like you would at home. And that's our authorization then to move forward, publicly bid out the project, and go from there. So people come, they vote in a May vote, and then they think that summer those projects are going to happen. It's almost always without fail that it's the summer afterwards where the projects actually occur. So last May, the voters voted on doing the North Library. We've been planning that all year. We have a building permit in hand. We've gone out to bid. We've awarded the bids. And now this summer, we'll actually do the library. So there's always at least a year wait. And since, depending upon what the construction is, we've only got an 8-week window, typically in a summer, to do inside construction, which is very challenging for a school. And obviously, we only have X number of contractors that do school-related work. So all the districts doing work at the same time are competing for the same group of contractors that have a very limited window of opportunity to work on a school property. So it does lengthen things. It's why a 2017 bond campaign is literally only just getting done now in 2025. Why are we adding lights to the field? And I list a number of things here. I certainly could read them off to you, but you could read them yourselves. Obviously, in the fall, we run into scenarios where games have to be called because of darkness. Children have to leave class early so that the game can be completed before darkness, all things of that nature. Plus, significant games or significant events can be better scheduled later in the evening for community participation. You know, if we have to schedule the event because it's in the fall and it's going to be dark by, 5 o'clock, there are people that can't see their child participate in a particular event because they're not yet home from work. So the lighting does give the district and the community flexibility with using the property to a great extent. And just a reminder to the board and to the community, this has to be voted on by the board to be placed on the ballot, and the board must authorize this before April 21st. It has to be on the ballot before 30 days before the vote. So literally by the next meeting, or if not by the next meeting, by a special meeting, we would need to decide if we were going to put a proposition forward to the community. Other questions? There's always a question, why turf and not grass? I'm not an expert in one versus the other. I do have a lot of experience in several different districts with turf fields. Obviously, a turf field can maintain a tremendous amount of continuous use year-round without the challenges that you have with a grass field. A typical turf field, the warranties are usually around 8 years. The carpets themselves last 10 to 12. So you look at a big ticket of, $8 million or so to do this entire complex. It's not $8 million every 10 years. The only part that needs to get changed every 10 to 12 years is the carpet itself. And the carpet itself, in today's dollars, is a little over $1 million, $1.1 million, $1.2 million, something in that range. So you're making an investment in the complex with all the other improvements, the grandstand, the track, things like that. But the field and all the drainage and everything else that's there, that goes on. And in my last district, I replaced 2 turf carpets before I left. It's a rather straightforward process. They just sort of really roll it up and roll it out. We know grass fields can be muddy, they can be rutted, they can be unstable, you can have sinkholes, things like that. Turf fields give you consistency. It's a beautiful field. For the students themselves, in probably almost every game they play at another school district, they're playing on a turf field. I believe we are, if not the only district possibly in Nassau County that does not have at least one turf field. If we decide to do grass versus turf, what does that look like? So I asked our architects to specify an exact same project using sod versus turf. And the difference is about $1.6 million. So it'd be about $6.8 million to do it in sod versus the 8.4 for the turf, with all things being equal except for the addition of irrigation for the grass field. And with the sod field, if we installed it, let's say in an August, September time range, you couldn't use it that fall. You'd have to wait until the following spring. And if you opted for seed versus sod, you need to wait an entire year before you can use the field. But the grass in time would then have the same characteristics and issues that you have with the current field. It would just take a few years for it to get there. So again, continuing the conversation, my presentation later this month will focus entirely on curriculum and instruction. The 4th presentation will be our formal adoption, and then we'll have our hearing. And again, our budget vote will be May 20th from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the 4 locations. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
So with the turf field, it is the intention of the administration to have the students from the south to use that field because that field is located in the north.
Yeah, the field is not a north field. It just would happen to be located in north. Certainly there could be logistical issues with scheduling. If north is playing home, then south couldn't play home. But once the field is there, the athletic department could look as much as possible to schedule events on that field. So even though South doesn't have theirs yet, they could go north and use the field there. And quite honestly, my intention and my recommendation to the board, and I'm sure Dr. Bossert would concur, is if the community supports this particular proposition, at the end of this year, we would look to see what monies were available. We'd place them into the capital reserve to restore it. We would look at those numbers and then start planning what the South Field might look like and what the costs might be. And we'd have a very similar conversation next year about putting proposition up for the South Field.
And with the lights being installed, it gives us more options because we extend the period playing time.
Yeah, absolutely. It
Right.
gives you greater versatility. Certainly accommodations could be made for community members that like to walk on the track at night. And if it gets dark, of course we have to be respectful to our neighbors and have the lights off by a certain time in the evening. They wouldn't stay on all night long. And they are dark skies compliant, so the majority of the light focuses downward. It doesn't bleed out into the community like the old lights used to. But then you also eliminate all those issues with the student athletes who either have to have a game that's postponed or canceled, or they need to leave classes earlier in the day to start the contest so that the contest can be completed.
If I can just add, and thank you, Mr. O'Keefe, for a very thorough review of our current status and proposal. Mr. Chen, we're very sensitive to making sure that there's a balance of resources provided to our community. I know the board has set as a priority, and we are following, making sure that both the north and south sides of our district receive equal opportunity and access to resources. So when we look in our proposed crystal ball, within Mr. O'Keefe's presentation includes capital expenditures within the budget to do a very large-scale overhaul of the auditorium at South High School, which we've been working with our building team to really put together a great vision. And the capital bond expenditure would be the field on the north side. If things go with community support, with the board support in the way we envision, we would simply do the opposite next year as our funding permits. So that we would focus on the arts and the auditorium within this budget at South. And then next year's budget, we would hope to address the aging North High auditorium while we're focused capital reserve on the field at South. That would be our full crystal ball view.
On the north side, the only thing that might trump that auditorium being done first, because that will be very complicated with the State Historic Preservation Office, might be the need for the renovation of the pool ahead of the auditorium. So we'll have to weigh, depending upon what our architects and engineers recommend, but certainly year to year we would try to maintain a balance with what's being done north to south, as well as all the needs, with the smaller buildings throughout the district, with roofing, siding, windows, all the regular things that require maintenance on buildings that are, quite frankly, on average, over 80 years old.
And I would like to say, as I think I now do almost every time you give a budget presentation, just thank you very much, you and Brian, for the work, the transparency that you provide. I hope the community can see just the amount of work that you both put in, that we all put in. And I appreciate that you make yourself available to the general community should they have any follow-up questions.
Certainly.
So thank you very much for the very thorough presentation.
Either my office, Mr. Ernst's office, or if necessary, the superintendent's office, we all remain available for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Malazzi, please let the minutes reflect that might be the first ever round of applause for a budget presentation in public school history. Thank you, Mr. O'Keefe.
And with that, we will move to agenda item 9A and 9B, which are donations, scholarship awards, monetary and non-monetary. May I have a motion to accept agenda items 9A and 9B?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank all of those who have contributed for their generosity.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I have all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes 4-0. And with that, I will move to agenda item 10, which is policy, and I will turn this portion of the meeting over to my colleague Joanne Chan from the Policy Committee.
Thank you. The following policies were reviewed at the February 11th board meeting, are on this agenda for second read and possible adoption. Policy 4230, Curriculum Adoption and Management. The Policy Committee has reviewed the policy to make sure it is in line with the development, assessment, and improvement of the district's educational programs. Policy 8115, Pesticide and Pest Management. This is a new policy replacing the original, which was very outdated and is more in line with other districts. Policy 9150, Staff-Student Relationships, in parentheses, non-fraternalization. This policy was reviewed by the Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, and wording was added to clarify the contact process between staff and students on field trips. Also addressed were the references to social media. May I have a motion to accept Agenda Item 10A, Policies 4230, 8115, and 9150 for second read and adoption?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chan. And with that, we can move to item 11, which is a consent agenda for items 11B through 14H. May I have a motion to accept agenda item 11A?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes 4-0.
May I add a comment, Mr. Stock?
Sure.
Thank you to the board for supporting the consent agenda, which included our personnel agenda and some noteworthy items to draw your attention and the public's attention to. Tonight, the board approved labor agreements with 2 individuals to assist us in ending our year from a leadership perspective on a very high note. As my communication to the community noted last week, as Dr. Holtzman will be beginning as our Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education on Monday, that left a large vacancy of principal of North High School. So we searched far and wide for the best candidate to fill the role in a very positive, enthusiastic way to end our year on a very positive note for both our seniors and all of our students and faculty. And we found him at South High School. Mr. Tom DiPaolo has been acting as our assistant principal at South High since the start of the school year, and in that time, Mr. DiPaolo has demonstrated such wonderful professionalism, engagement, enthusiasm, zest for forming positive relationships with our students, that when we approached him about taking on this promotion opportunity and shifting him over to North High, his only hesitation was leaving South High. But we are very happy that he accepted this offer from myself and the Board of Education, and tonight approved to begin Monday as our acting principal at North High School, Mr. DiPaolo. Congratulations. Would you like to say a few words?
Well, thank you, Dr. Bossert, and to the board, and I'm glad that my wife is here to hear all those good words. But in August, when I joined the Great Neck family, one of the first things that we did was a administrative retreat, and that's when I got a chance to see the real family that is Great Neck. It was like a love fest. I mean, everybody was so happy to see each other. Some of them haven't seen each other in a while. And now that I'm part of that family, it's so nice to know that the board and you have faith in me to lead one of the preeminent schools in Nassau County, in New York State, and in the whole country. I spent a few days there yesterday and today. The kids are just awesome, and I'm looking forward to the next few months. I do say, with all due respect, I'm going to miss our time together, the trio that we had, but I know that professional relationship and personal relationship will continue long past June. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Holtzman. He and I and Jerry have known each other for many, many years, and he certainly has left me a very capable and very well-established place that I can come in and have some fun. So I thank the Board of Education, and I thank Adam and Michael so much for this opportunity, because if it wasn't that great there at Great Neck South, I wouldn't be here today. So thank you very much.
Now, the board and community is going to have to give me some latitude on this next introduction, because when needing to replace Tom, we found Jerry. The board tonight approved a labor agreement with Mrs. Jerry DiCarlo, who comes to us with a wealth of experience as high school principal in both Oceanside and most recently Hewlett. Jerry, we thank you for making yourself available and bringing what we is sure to be a level of professionalism and experience and the ability to form relationships to the students at South High. As you just heard, it's an incredible team that you'll be joining, but we welcome you to it, and we're so happy that you are here tonight, and perhaps you'd like to say a few words as well.
Good evening. I would like to take a moment to thank the Board of Education and Dr. Passett for entrusting me with just an incredible opportunity. I met some of the students tonight, and it was just phenomenal. It is truly my honor to join a team of dedicated professionals who are committed to fostering academic excellence and professional growth for every student. I am equally excited to work with our outstanding students, some of whom you met tonight, for their phenomenal accomplishments. I look forward to contributing to the continued success of this vibrant and caring community. I'm filled with anticipation and eagerness to collaborate with a passionate team of teachers who share a deep and steadfast commitment to supporting our students' success. I can't wait to start tomorrow. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
And as she just indicated, Mrs. DiCarlo will begin tomorrow, working alongside Mr. DiPasquale, Mr. Hopkins, to reform the triumvirate of vibrant leadership at South High. And thank you for taking the time to cultivate the environment that you have that allows us to make this shift and to welcome new talent to the organization, which I'm sure will be without missing a beat for our students and staff. So thank you all for your continued leadership and support of our students and faculty. And thank you for the board for supporting the recommendations.
And with that, we can move to agenda item 15, which is open time. So at this time, if you have filled out a yellow card with all the relevant information and handed it to our district clerk, sitting over there, Ms. Malazi, we will ask that you come to the podium when your name is called, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. And comments regarding individual personnel or students will not be permitted. So with that, I'll lead off with Mr. Matt Jagoda.
On? Okay. So I took full advantage of hybrid again. Mr. O'Keefe, you're wonderful through the streaming as you are in person, so thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to really thank the outgoing assistant interim principal or interim assistant principal of South High. I think if I had a little bit of time before we knew that this was going to happen, I probably could have tried to talk to some type of scientific community to name a measure against this gentleman. And it would measure impact over time or time over impact, I don't know, whatever the appropriate measure would be. But I think we can honestly say, and I don't think I'm speaking on behalf of only myself, many parents and I have agreed. We walked out of a PTO meeting as an example and have just thoroughly enjoyed the time. But not just for us as parents, but impact on the kids. And we're so happy and so welcoming to others coming in addition to the admin who's there. But I would say that the culture of the school has changed. I would say that that impact comes from the leadership in the school. It comes from, you know, although, you know, once the temperature got below 32, it's a little bit questionable what happened, but it comes from, you know, administrators standing outside the building, shaking hands. If there were babies, they'd probably kiss them. It comes from just building relationships. You know, I've heard so much about other administrators. I think Bernie Kaplan has been sort of famed for how he knew every student's name, right, and really got to know students in a very particular way. And I think it speaks volumes to the passion and the energy that, that I think is emblematic of the people working in this district. So I just wanted to take that time. I rushed over here as soon as I got out of work because it was so important to me and I think, again, to our children. And the impact has been immeasurable. So thank you to all the hard work that's going into filling these roles, to bringing great people into the district, to making sure that we're bringing quality educators, administrators, faculty, and staff to everything that we're doing here in Great Neck. So thank you to the board, thank you Dr. Bossert and the administration, and certainly to our in-school administration. Really appreciate it.
Next is Kevin Kwa.
Good evening. Good evening to the members of the board, faculty, and community. First off, I want to thank the board for the time and allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Kevin, and I'm a sophomore here at Great Neck South High School. I'm speaking tonight because I, along with many students, believe that our beloved evening security guard should be brought back to our school community. First off, I was disappointed and saddened when I heard that our well-known security guard was no longer in our building after school. To me, he was more than just a regular security guard. He was a role model. When I was a freshman, I got to know him after my wrestling practices, which is like 6 p.m. He was the main security guard at that time when there's no other security guard around. He was kind enough to check in with me to see if I'm doing okay and also engage in conversation about my sport. I believe our school community benefit from his good energy, positivity, and most importantly, his care for students' well-beings. A friend of mine told me that during Hell Week for the Cultural Heritage performance last December, our evening security guard made sure that every performance had a good night's sleep. Most importantly, a safe ride home. Besides his act of kindness, he took his position very seriously. I've seen him ensuring that all students scan their IDs upon returning to school, which helped maintain building security. He was also helpful with announcing late buses and as well as reminding students to bring their iPad, cell phones, backpacks, and IDs, which many of us forget to. Most importantly, the evening security guard made many of us feel safer, including me. Seeing a familiar face out there looking out for us made every student feel comfortable, including me. His presence wasn't just about security, it's about trust. It's important that students not only feel protected, but also comfortable and supported by our school. I respect that certain decisions need to be made for the best for our school. However, I believe that bringing back our beloved evening security guard means bringing back someone who had a positive impact in our school community. I urge the board to please consider what he means to us and how much his presence mattered. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you for your remarks, and I know that you had a conversation with Mr. Hopkins also. He conveyed it to me, and thank you for modifying your remarks so they fit within the guidelines of what's acceptable during public comment. We really appreciate that. I do want to reply. Obviously, you are aware we can't discuss confidential personnel matters at a public meeting like this, but I do want to assure you that student voice means a great deal to the administration and the board, and we've heard you tonight. Thank you.
Next up is Tin Ching Sun.
Check, check. Okay. Salutations. My name is Yujin Sun, a senior at Great Neck South High School, as I'm sure you guys all know. And I am here tonight to speak about a potential policy change that has affected my school's security. Now, as a student at South for nearly 4 years by now, I can say for certainty that the students at South, like the faculty members, love even, especially the security guards who are there every morning to make sure we scan in our IDs and there to support us when we're after school for rehearsing performances or practicing sports. And so you can imagine our shock when we discovered that one of our security guards was dismissed from our community, myself included. Now, I have done my fair share of investigation, and based on the answers I have uncovered so far, it seems that our school has made a shift in policies regarding our security. And to make matters even more complex, I have received differing answers on what this change might actually be. Some have said that our school is changing how much our security guards are working, like hours, and some others have been also saying that our security guards are preferred or required to have specialized experience, such as previously working in law enforcement. My issue is that I have yet to hear a definite answer on what this policy is and who advocated for this. I have looked through our school's safety plan, contacted my school's principal, PTO, UPTC, and even some of my teachers, and most of them have came back inconclusive or have redirected me to somebody else. So I would be forever grateful if you could confirm for me and for the students of Great Neck South if there has been a change in this policy that affected our school's security, what this policy is, and who advocated for this policy. Thank you.
Your question I can answer. We have to be careful when we use the word policy because a policy is drafted, reviewed publicly, and adopted by the Board of Education. What you're referring to in our shift to employing security guards with former law enforcement experience, I will refer to as a focus or an initiative. I know you were listening to Mr. O'Keefe's budget presentation, and one of the things he mentioned was that shift. So you're correct in that you will not find writing in a policy. There has definitively been an effort by the administration and leadership with the contracted security guard firm we use, Arrow, to hire guards with former law enforcement experience. There is a belief shared by the administration and the Board of Education that former law enforcement officers bring a skill set and a lens that is desired when we hire guards to protect our assets, meaning our students, faculty, staff, and buildings. So that is an initiative that you should expect to hear more about. And I believe, Mr. O'Keefe, correct me if I'm wrong, we're over 95% of our guards now are former law enforcement officers. And I think while there are certainly individuals and personalities that connect well with students, I think that we are attempting to make sure that all of our positions do that. And each person that we hire has both the law enforcement background and the ability to relate well with our faculty, staff, and students.
Next up is Evelyn Wang.
Hi, I'm here to address a long-term issue actually existed for the entire country, not just for Great Neck School District. And I think many parents have brought this issue is that we don't use textbook anymore. And I think the reason is because the textbook is not aligned with our curriculum anymore, and it's very difficult to find a textbook that suits middle school or high school teaching. So we found that in middle school and high school, students are reading slides, the short bullets for learning, and then suddenly when they enter the university, they are requested to read chapters after chapters. That's why a lot of students, they don't feel, maybe the teachers feel they're college ready, but when they reach the college, the professors don't think they are college ready. And I'm thinking that, is that possible? Because I found many online resources that actually can use as textbook. I'm thinking, is that possible we can have middle school teachers and high school teachers to align the curriculum with some online readings, and we can have parents, volunteers to make them into PDF textbooks, actually distribute around the district. Instead of spending more money on the paper textbook, we can use online resources, but to give students and parents a chance to access formal and long reading. And I think this way, students can be more college ready and more used to this self-learning, self-teaching process. And also maybe periodically have teachers to assign reading homework, let them to read certain chapters in those self-made PDF textbooks and do some homework like that to just help them to get back to, instead of always online and slides, to get back to the classical way or a college way so that they can be more prepared. That's what I want to suggest. So I think it can address the curriculum alignment problem and also address the funding issues. And I think we can start from middle school, all the subject, when they have subject to learn, all the subject can assign some, can align with the online reading resources, and we can make the textbook. That's what I'm suggesting here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and suggestion. I just want to comment two things in response with the board's consent. One thing about your suggestion, we have to be very careful about copying and distributing instructional materials. As a public school, there are copyright laws that we need to follow. So often there are resources that we can use but not mass distribute. So we have to be careful about that. But as far as the use of a textbook, unlike a college course where there's usually a required textbook, a textbook is not required for a secondary course in Great Neck or most public schools. It is, however, part of the tool of a valuable resource. And I'm hopeful that as students are ascending through our middle schools and high schools, they're gaining exposure to textbook use, but their class and their curriculum is not based on the textbook. I think that there is some antiquated teaching approaches where students were simply given a textbook and that guided the curriculum for the class. Whereas solid pedagogy, a textbook will be a resource among many resources that teachers use to help impart their curriculum. So I would not want to see a situation where every class is assigned a text and that's the foundation for reading, and you're not suggesting that. But I would like to see the textbook being amongst the resources teachers are using along the way. Some classes are more conducive to a text, like a history class where history doesn't really change, whereas a class that we're introducing on news media literacy, probably not a textbook-driven class. So hopefully we're keeping focus as courses are being proposed to make sure there's a balance of the resources students are being given in order to achieve.
The next card belongs to Tanya Eshigoff.
Good evening. Nice to see everyone. I think Ms. Wang, your statement was something that I and many families and parents have been thinking about having children in both public school and private school. I'm amazed at how the curriculum is based on solely digital. The children are frustrated. I don't think textbooks are antiquated. In fact, when you look at some of the highest performing prep schools in New York City, the children's book bags are like my book bags about 30 years ago. They're heavy. The children have lots of textbooks. They still have paper to pen. And what is lost is the syntax, the download of information when a child uses a pen or paper on a pen and a paper. That whole system is gone. And for a school like Great Neck, where we have, I think, one of the best students in the country, they deserve the very best in those tools. So I'm not sure how that policy came about to have education put into a Google platform. Some of the best prep schools have, and I really hope that this happens for every child in Great Neck. They surely deserve it. But the platforms that the children use in prep schools all over New York, I hope that I can share that with you at one time, at a point, and you can see how interactive those types of platforms are in terms of websites. Sort of a one-size-fits-all, to use a Google platform for everything is not to the level of the Great Neck Standard. And a child who graduated from this district, and it's not at all a comment on any teacher, but a comment on a system that has left the basics for our kids. And on top of that, I'm just surprised it hasn't been mentioned, but we have
30 seconds.
Okay, we have the Department of Education shrinking at the state level in DC, and I just want to know any thoughts on that from you guys, and what you think and how that may impact our district. I'm surprised that didn't come up, but I know everyone's thinking about it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments and your question. I'll answer your question first. The cuts at the federal level are certainly something that we're watching very carefully. But just so the community, and I know I've been communicating with the board on this issue, the largest percentage of all of our resources and regulations and policies that govern our school district are born at the state level. The Federal Department of Education, while it does impact some of our governments and some of our funding, is dwarfed compared to what the state education department means to our public school here in Great Neck. So we're monitoring the federal department changes carefully. We are making sure that we can continue to secure the funding that comes from the federal level. That has been secured for now, but it's something we are watching very carefully as changes take place at the federal level. And we're hopeful that the laws and governance that exist at the federal level continue in a positive way to influence what we're doing at the state level. But the state education department is the ruling authority that governs this and other public schools in New York State. So we work with NYSCD and the state education department very closely to make sure that we're meeting all of our requirements and regulations and exceeding them for our students. Your comment about textbooks, I'll just re-emphasize what I said. I think our students deserve a diverse set of experiences, and that there is certainly value to pen and paper and hard copy books, but we are also preparing our students for post-secondary life, and now having had 2 children complete their 4-year programs at state universities and now both in graduate school, the only school supply they've needed is their MacBook. Everything's digital. Their textbooks are digital subscriptions. All of their documents are submitted digitally. So we have to be cognizant of that as well. That while we want to diversify students' experiences, we also want to prepare them for a digital world that they are entering no matter their post-secondary planning, whether it's workforce or college. We know that they'll be very heavily involved in a digital environment. I would invite you to come to our curriculum committee meeting, which is scheduled to take place next week. I want to give you the correct time and place, so I'm looking at my calendar so I don't misquote it. Our curriculum committee is meeting, thank you, March 19th at 4 o'clock at North High School, where we will have an opportunity to hear from many teachers representing our secondary math programs at both North and South High, but also have time to engage in questions and other conversation related to our curriculum. That would probably be a better time to have a dialogue about some of these issues. We will make sure that we meet regularly as a curriculum committee and that the topics of interest to our parents make each agenda, so hopefully you'll be able to attend a future meeting.
And with that, that was a good lead into agenda item 16, which is our board committee reports. I guess I can start off with the budget committee. We have no report at this particular moment, but we are scheduled to meet next Tuesday on March 18th at the South High School Library. I'll be there. Steve and I will both be there. Our legislative committee, our next meeting actually happens to be tomorrow morning, or tomorrow afternoon rather, at 2 o'clock. And then we have another meeting on Friday. And as Dr. Bossert stated, the curriculum committee will be meeting next Wednesday, March 19th. And I don't believe there's any report from the safety committee at this point. So with that, we can go to agenda item 17, which is board discussion. Is there anything you'd like to say? So with that, our next regular meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March 25th, so in 2 weeks, right back here at 7:30 in the evening. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The vote carries 4-0. Have a nice evening.